Nazareth Bilingual School.
Anchor text. Lisa's Lunch Plan by Alan Pritchard. I looked at the backpack on my bed. It was navy with thin white stripes and silver zippers shinier than a new coin. To top it off, it had a bookworm's patch sewn on it, with the logo of our school book club. Most of my friends and classmates dreaded the thought of a new school year, but I seemed to be the exception. I always looked forward to it. For me, the start of a new school year was like a fresh adventure. Sure, there would be lots of studying, writing papers, and taking tests, but there was so much more. It meant making new friends, learning new things, and reading and discussing new books with my book club. To be honest, my favorite part of the school day was lunch. Not only did we get a little relief from all our lessons, but we also got to spend some quality time with friends and classmates. As I picked up my backpack, I checked to make sure my notebook, paper, pens, and lunch were all inside, and then zipped it up and headed out the door. The first day of school was always busy and exciting. Seeing friends who had been away all summer, finding your way to different classrooms, meeting new teachers. But starting school as a fifth grader was different from every other first day. I felt a sense of pride being part of the oldest group of students in the school. I also felt a certain sense of responsibility toward the younger students. I would be the one to help them find their classrooms, and my friends and I would be the ones to warn them about the teachers who liked to assign extra homework. In first period, Miss Bond called each name on the attendance list and introduced a new student named Beth, seated next to me. There was something different about Beth. Where everyone else had been chattering, smiling, and laughing before class began, Beth was quiet and withdrawn. While the class eagerly took first-day notes as Miss Bond explained what to expect for the year, Beth slumped in her chair without writing a word. Maybe she was just anxious about being a new student. Or maybe she just hadn't gotten enough sleep. Later, in third period, I was seated next to Beth again. When Miss Congdon announced that the science class would visit a wild animal sanctuary next week, everyone cheered. But Beth sat there quietly, looking like she might fall asleep at any second. Maybe she's not into animals or field trips, I thought. And that was a big maybe. Why would someone have the urge to sleep when a field trip to see some wild animals up close was on the horizon? At lunch, I unzipped my backpack and took out my food. On the menu today was the usual: a boiled egg, a bag of almonds, red grapes, a pack of crackers, and apple juice. Perfect. Two of my best friends, Martina and Wendy, came over to the table and asked to save 2 seats while they waited in the cafeteria line. Sure thing, I said. As they walked away, I began peeling my egg. Looking around, I saw everyone chatting, laughing, and catching up over cookies, crackers, and cranberry juice. I glanced over to the end of the table, and there sat Beth, alone, not eating. In fact, it didn't look like she even had anything to eat. I thought maybe she had already eaten her lunch, but lunch had just started, and even Tricia Farnsworth, the fastest eater in school, still had a few bites to go. Plus, Beth was looking around at the other tables like someone looking for something lost. She sure looked like she could use a friend. I smiled and then noticed Beth was looking back at me. I'm Lisa. Beth. She smiled for the first time. Welcome to the school. Did you just move here? I asked her. Yeah. My mom and I just moved from Michigan. She grew up here a long time ago, I guess. She replied very quietly. Well, the school is pretty great. I think you'll like it, I told her. So far, so good, Beth responded. Plus, we're the oldest in the school now, I said with a grin. Sure are. Beth could barely even register a smile now, like someone exhausted from running a marathon or something. Martina and Wendy came back, sitting down by me, and I introduced them to Beth. No lunch? Wendy asked as she munched on some fruit salad. The turkey sandwiches are amazing here. Beth looked shocked and embarrassed, her face suddenly turning red. It was as if Wendy had said that Beth would get a week's worth of detention for not having a sandwich in front of her. No, I'm not really hungry today, Beth said. Hey, I gotta run to the office. Something about my schedule. Beth picked up her things, awkwardly waved goodbye, and hurried out through the cafeteria door. She seems nice, but she's sure in a hurry, observed Wendy, crunching on an apple slice. Yeah, I said. I could tell something was off. What was it, though? The week went on, and I couldn't help noticing that Beth just sat there each day at lunch, sometimes talking, sometimes rather quiet, but always without a lunch. In class, she wasn't engaged and seemed distracted. I even heard her stomach gurgle and growl during lectures. On Thursday, Wendy, Martina, and I were telling Beth about the bookworms and hoping she might join the club. When we finished, I said, Hey, I'm not much in the mood for grapes. Anyone want these? I held up the plastic bag with 2 clumps of plump red grapes. Nah, said Wendy. I'm good, thanks. Got my own, said Martina, popping one into her mouth and smiling. Beth? I asked. Take them if you want them. Well, sure, said Beth. I mean, if nobody else wants them. They're all yours, I told her. And here, take the rest of my almonds. I'm stuffed. Beth took the grapes and almonds, thanking me again. They were gone faster than Tricia Farnsworth could have put them away. It gave me an idea for next week. When the next week came, it was business as usual. Homework was turned in, lessons were reviewed, pop quizzes were given, and we all discussed the upcoming field trip. When the bell rang for recess, we headed outside. I took my time putting away some things in my locker as everyone ran out to the courtyard. I made sure I was the only one in the hallway, calling out, "Hello?" and peeking around the corner. When I was sure I was by myself, I pulled a bag of grapes, almonds, and an apple from my backpack. I'd packed 2 lunches today, one for me and one for Beth. I crept over to Beth's locker and slowly opened it, careful not to let it creak too loudly. As I nestled the lunch carefully under a notebook in Beth's book bag, I was startled by a sound behind me. It was Miss Abernathy, the librarian. She cleared her throat. "Lisa, is that your locker?" asked the librarian. "No, but I can explain," I stammered. "I think you can explain to Principal Marquet," she said sternly. "Taking someone else's belongings is a serious violation of school rules. Why don't you take the hall pass and head to the office, young lady?" I was horrified. Sure, it looked like I had been rifling through someone else's locker, but I had been too scared and shocked to explain everything to Miss Abernathy. Principal Marquet was seated behind her desk, signing papers when I knocked on the half-closed door. "Come in," she said. I walked in slowly. "Ah, Miss Kirk. Miss Abernathy just called and told me to expect you. Would you like to take a seat?" "Yes, ma'am," I replied as I quietly sat down. My stomach was tumbling and rumbling and twisting over itself. I'd never been in trouble with the principal before. "It appears you were going through someone else's locker," said Principal Marquet. "Would you like to explain?" I told her everything. How I had noticed that Beth was acting strange, how she never had lunch, and how she had gobbled up the grapes and almonds. The teachers always told us that succeeding in school was dependent on a good lunch. I told Principal Marquet that it seemed as if Beth's ability to pay attention in class was deteriorating. I explained that I had brought a second lunch that day for Beth and wanted to sneak it into her backpack during recess. It seemed like a better option than offering it to Beth in person because I didn't want to embarrass her. I was only trying to make sure that she had some food. Principal Marquet listened carefully to each word, nodding. I understand that you want to help, Lisa, and I commend you for that. When a student is hungry, she can be distracted, tired, or even disruptive. It's upsetting to see. But what you did isn't the most effective way to go about helping. Yes, ma'am, I replied sheepishly. I trudged back to class, confused at how I should feel about the whole thing. I was just trying to help, and all I did was get into trouble. It's not as if I was forcing everyone at school to support an ordinance to ban hunger. There had to be a better way to go about it. I racked my brain for the rest of the day, on my way home, through dinner, and up until it was time to sleep. As I hung my backpack on the hook of my closet door, making sure my folders and books were in place for tomorrow, the idea hit me. It was one I knew Principal Marquet would agree with, but I wanted to make sure she granted her permission before I did anything. And there was someone else I needed to speak to first. The next morning, I knocked on Principal Marquet's door. Hello, Miss Kirk. Good to see you again. What can I help you with? It's about what we discussed yesterday, with helping Beth, I said. Yes, she said with a curious look. I had an idea, I explained. If Beth needs help, then chances are other students need help too. As Principal Marquet sat quietly and listened, I told her that we could pack healthy lunches for students who didn't have anything to eat. The lunch bags could be kept in the nurse's office. Teachers in each class would hand out notes to every student explaining about the lunches in the nurse's office. Then Beth and other students like her could easily have a meal without the possibility of being embarrassed. It's a good idea, but where would the food come from? Asked Principal Marquet. I have already thought of that, I said proudly. I just spoke to Mrs. Lowell in the cafeteria. She said that they often have to throw away food after a few days when it starts to go bad. Instead, the leftover food from lunch each day could be used for the special lunches the next day. Mrs. Lowell thinks she could provide about a dozen lunches for students with a minimum amount of effort. And what if we need additional lunches? Replied the principal, not totally convinced. Even with some food from our cafeteria, a project like this still takes funding. I've thought of that too. We can rely on crowdfunding by creating a web page asking for donations. We could also work with the food bank downtown. I just think our school should do something to help students who can't find a meal any other way. It seems as if you've thought of everything, said Principal Marquet. Let me review this with the school board, and once we have their approval, we'll go from there. Yes, ma'am, I replied. I was grinning from ear to ear as I turned to leave. And Lisa, said the principal. Yes? Good job, she told me. A couple of weeks later, the principal, my parents, and I met with the head of the local food bank and discussed the issue. The crowdfunding site soon went up, and we got $4,000 in donations the first week. Soon the notes were distributed to classrooms, and the lunch program went into full effect. I could detect a change in Beth almost immediately. She was more talkative, more energetic, and she participated more. Something as simple as a good lunch had completely changed my new friend. Near the end of the school year, I was asked to go to the principal's office one morning. This time, I wasn't scared or worried, just curious. When I sat down in Principal Marquet's office, she was looking at me with a huge smile. Lisa, as you know, the lunch program was a huge success this year. More than a few teachers have reported improvements in some of their students' performance, she told me. What you may not know is that other schools in our town and neighboring communities have approached us for help with starting similar programs. That's incredible. I never thought my simple idea would have such a big impact, I admitted. Well, your idea has really caught the attention of local communities, and I expect the program to spread to even more schools in the next few years, Principal Marquet explained. I want you to be a student advisor on the committee that I'm forming to help other students set up their own lunch programs. I was honored that my principal thought so highly of me. I don't know what to say, I managed to get out. Say you'll do it, laughed Principal Marquet. I'll do it, I said without any hesitation.